So, as you've probably already seen this slide, I want you to imagine that God invited you to take a walk with Him, and on that walk, He showed you what He wanted this church to become over this next 10 years. And imagine that He showed you what we were going to have to do in order to get there, and what spiritual preparation would be necessary. That is the reason that we are here. So the first thing that you need to know is that I hope we can take the first steps on that journey. So we're going to begin the process of discovering God's vision. And this is a two-part thing. It is both a spiritual, strategic journey that involves empowering you as a congregation. And it is it's both spiritual and strategic. So that involves two different, distinct things. So when I talk about entering into 100 days of prayer, obviously that's spiritual. When we get down to doing a lot of nitty-gritty planning, that kind of stuff would be strategic. Now, how many of you are going to have a garden this year? Anybody in here going to be planting a garden? There's a few of you. Okay? So I got to thinking about what this process is like. So I came up with this idea that it's sort of like planting a garden. How is a garden strategic? Anybody, you want to plant your garden in rows? Or are you just going to throw the seeds out there? So it's kind of, I guess you're going to plant in rows. Some of you might not. I don't know. But I always watched my grandfather plant gardens, and are you going to plant all of one kind in one row, or are you going to take your seeds and mix them all up and just say, "Ooh, let's just see what I get in this row"? Planting a garden, it's strategic. Now, for some of you, it's actually spiritual too. You get out in the dirt and put your hands in the dirt, and watching God do something with the earth. There's a spiritual process involved in that. And how is it visionary? Well, when you plant, you're hoping that, in the end, it's going to look a little something maybe like this. Of course, I never had that much fortune. But you have a vision that when you plant, that you're going to get some results. And so our visioning process is both strategic and it is spiritual. Now, our purpose is to determine whether you even want to be on this journey at all. Do we want to commit ourselves to a growing season where we are actually pulled into the future that God has chosen for us? Do we want to blossom into a church of excellence in all that we do? But currently, God is the only one that knows what our future is going to be like. Now, if anyone else really knows what the future is going to be, then maybe you can fill out the rest of my NCAA bracket for me. Because if you know the future, then maybe I can, do a little better than I did on the last section. God's the only one who knows the future, so that means that we have to listen to God together. So if we're going to go where we've never been before, then we must exercise faith and depend on God to get us there. So do you want to do the hard work that we need to trust God long enough to allow this church to become what George Bullard has termed a faith-soaring church? So here's a few characteristics of faith-soaring churches. They go from being ordinary to extraordinary. Are we pulled by God to places of inspiration, imagination, and innovation? We're continually transforming our capacity to reach our full kingdom potential. We take leaps of faith like Abram. He left his place down in Mesopotamia, went to Haran, came down into what we now call the Holy Land or Zion. And, his wife kept saying, "Where are we going? Do you know where you're going?" We'll know when we get there. God said He'd show me. Yeah, sure He did. But Abram, who became Abraham, he walked by what? He walked by faith. And so this is what faith-soaring churches do. And is that easy? No. We have to depend on God to do what we cannot do for ourselves. And so that means that we develop these big, holy, almighty goals. And those are not easy for churches to do. We cross barriers to minister in places among people where we feel uncomfortable, like Ananias did when he went to minister to Saul. Do you think that was easy? You want me to go lay hands on who? He kills people. We venture out to missionary journeys that are guided by the Holy Spirit, like Paul did in Macedonia. And like a few of you have gone to minister into places. And like all of you do, as when we send these bags of sewn clothing to Brazil and other places. We do a lot of things collectively as we go together. And we pursue excellence at every opportunity. We're faithful to the core of the gospel. We seek new and relevant ways to tell the never-ending story of Jesus. Now, this is interesting that these churches are churches of all sizes. They're pace-setter churches. But faith-soaring churches make up less than 20% of all churches. Now, I want to give you a list of the types of churches, and I want you to think about, as we go through this list, and I'm going to give it to you again at the end, where you think we fit in this list. So a faith-soaring church is a perfecting church. And I'm going to give you, I'm going to go through them real quick, and I'm going to give them to you again at the end. A pursuing church are those churches that have the capacity and the opportunity to become a faith-soaring church. Preparing church is those that are developing the capacity to become a pursuing church. Providing church, they're limited in ministry, and they're mostly satisfied with the way they are. Just kind of, we're all right. Good enough is good enough. And a presiding church, they're carrying out the basic kind of ministries, and they're really unmotivated to do any more than they're doing. So let's give you a few more, flesh out this a little bit more. So a perfecting church, these are faith-soaring churches. They're already on a spiritual and strategic journey to achieve their full kingdom potential. They know who they are, they know what they value and what they believe, they know where they're going, and they know how they're going to get there. All right? So those are very important keys. Now, the pursuing churches, they're seeking to become a faith-soaring church. They have the capacity and the opportunity to get there. A preparing church, they're seeking to develop the capacity to become pursuing congregations, but they don't yet know what it takes to become a pursuing church. Providing churches are those that are effective in a limited number of areas of ministry, and they're generally satisfied with their current situation. Good enough is good enough. And then a presiding church, these are carrying out basic programs and ministries of the congregation, but they're just really not motivated to do much more than they're currently doing. So I want you to look at those: perfecting, pursuing, preparing, providing, and presiding. Okay. Now we're not perfecting. We're not there. Where do you think we land? What do you want us to be? Okay. Love this illustration. I went and did a little bit more homework on it. It's 1970, 65-year-old Walinda, just up the road from here. Many of you have gone to the Tallulah Gorge and you've stopped by there. And when you look across that gorge, that's absolutely hard to believe that anybody even stretched a cable across that gorge, much less walked across it on a cable. There was 30,000 people there and watched him perform 2 headstands as he went out there on it for this quarter-mile gap. Now, his grandson was going to do this, I think, either last year or the year before, recreate it, but they couldn't get the funding to do it. In 78, he was age 73, and he attempted to walk 2 towers between a 2-story Plaza Hotel in San Juan, Puerto Rico, stretched 121 feet above the pavement, but he fell to his death during his attempt. And his wife said that months preceding the fall, Carl transitioned from an attitude of having confidence and courage to one of having fear and lots of caution. He morphed from an aerialist that lived to soar to one who was very hesitant, and he began to just be consumed with the fear of falling. And so this fear later became known as the Wallenda factor. Too many congregations are more afraid of failing than they are of walking by faith. They're gripped more by this fear of failure than they are the exhilaration of success. They focus more on fixes rather than solutions. You might always hear people talking about, well, this is wrong with my church. They're always complaining about what's wrong. And they're never talking about the good things that are going on in their church. They're short-term thinkers, and they're not long-term thinkers. And this is the question I want you to think about. Who are we going to end up being like? Are we going to be like Wallenda? Or are we going to be like Abraham, who walked by faith? Or will we be like Mary, who had to have a tremendous amount of faith when the angel came to her and said, "Don't be afraid, Mary. God is honoring you." So here is the secret to becoming a faith-soaring church are these things. The secret is having these things in synergy. Okay? Those of you who are mechanics understand this term. Vision, relationships, programs, and management. All of these are necessary. You have to have all of them working in synergy. They all have to be working together within the context of the church in order for us to soar by faith. Synergetic congregations. These are the 4 organizing principles. And no one of these qualities alone can enable a congregation to soar by faith. They correspond in an analogous way with Mark 12 and 30. And you shall love the Lord with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, and with all of your strength. And so vision then is equated then with our heart. Vision deals with our core values and our passion, our causes. Why do we exist as a church? What is the reason why we are here? What are we about? Relationships then is about our soul. It deals with the experiences and the thrill, the love and the interaction we have with God and with each other. I've often talked about, looked at it like the cross. The cross is the vertical here with God, and the horizontal is reaching out then to one another. Then we have the programs, and this deals with their mind. This is the strategies, the structures, the goals, and the accomplishment. And then management deals with actions, efficiency, focus, and metrics. And we're going to break all these down and show you just a little bit more detail in a minute. So, George Bullard, who designed this model, this is kind of the way he designed it. For him, those of you can choose your own model, but he says that a ride of excellence for him is a Lexus SUV. Now, I know we got Ford dealer in here, so and some of you, your ride of excellence, you can choose your own ride of excellence, okay? But for him, it's a Lexus SUV, and so he he says that in order for a church to be moving forward in a direction where we are going to achieve excellence in the future, is that vision always has to be driving. And that in the passenger seat, relationships always has to be in the passenger seat as the navigator. And that in the back seat, programs always has to be in the back seat and is a supporter of relationships and management. These two have an interdependent relationship with one another, because programs is always asking management, I need some more money for my program. And that management then is always the supporter of the vision. And that these then have a synergistic relationship with each other. And we're going to see in a moment what happens when that gets out of line. Okay? Vision fuels the journey, and church cannot soar if it is driven by anything else. Relationship flavors the journey. When you come to church, one of the reasons why you come is for the flavor. Didn't you just get through eating food? Yeah. The flavor is good too, right? Well, the flavor of the church is the relationships. Don't you just love coming and being with people that you love? You don't come just because we have a program. You come for the relationships. And management plays a supporting role then to the vision. Now, the ideal configuration produces synergy, and this is very difficult to achieve, because once achieved, a church can live in this vision, but it only can live in this vision for 7 to 9 years. Before any church, I don't care how great the church is, any church must reconfigure and revision. Do you remember the Crystal Cathedral? What happened to the Crystal Cathedral? Is it still around? It's dead, defunct, sold. What happened to the vision? It was once a great, thriving church. I don't care how big your church is. I don't care how great it is. If it does not reconfigure and go through new visioning, it will one day die. So Bullard says that 6 out of 10 congregations that need to transform choose to lay down beside the challenge and go to sleep. 2 out of 10 will be successful long term, and these will soar with faith. The others will push up against a wall that they can't get through. So what I'm saying to you is, most pastors that stand where I'm standing are not going to be successful in a 150-year-old church. This is not easy. Only 20% make it to excellence. So what do we have to do in order for us to be a church that achieves vision? I want you to understand that this is a movement of God that is memorable rather than a statement that is memorized. We have a vision statement. Does anybody know what it is? Now see, you know we're not captivated by vision if we don't even know our vision statement.
All about relationships.
That's our slogan. But I'll take it. Because relationships is in the front seat. Okay? And it is part of it is the navigator. And that's why I've got relationships in the front seat and I've got the vision statement out there in the parking lot, because both of those help drive the church toward excellence. But this is what I'm saying to you, is that we need more than a vision statement. We need vision. And vision is experimental. You're caught up in vision. A vision is designed to capture the essence of the energy that is propelling a community forward. This is energy that you can smell and taste and feel. So how can I explain it to you? You're caught up in vision. Was not our nation caught up in vision on many different occasions? When our nation was birthed, we could taste freedom. The Boston Tea Party. When John F. Kennedy said we could make it to the moon, were we not caught up in that vision? When women did not have the right to vote, when African Americans did not have the right to vote or many of the freedoms that they now have, was there not a vision that they got caught up in? As I mentioned in my sermon this morning, was Martin Luther not caught up in a vision that there could be more freedom because the masses did not even have access to reading the Scriptures? And as he began to read the Scriptures, he began to see the church is not telling us the whole truth about the Bible. And and people got caught up in a vision. So the congregation has a strong, clear, passionate sense of identity involving the mission and its purpose. So to give you just a little bit of an understanding, mission, if you talk to Christian churches, most Christian churches have pretty much the same mission. You know, the Great Commission is explained in Matthew. And so we all kind of understand what our mission is as a church. But a vision is specific to each individual church. Our core values and our vision and its strategic journey, this is what we want to be caught up in. So the congregation then, we know who we are, we know what we believe, where we're going, and we know how we're going to get there. So, this is what I want you to understand. While the pastor may be kind of the chief visionary officer, we will operate from the theological premise that God seeks to impart vision to all of us. We're going to go on this journey together. There are some churches out there where you might hear that the pastor is the one who has the vision. And then he just kind of, I'll tell you where we're going. You just ask me, because God told me, and now I'm going to tell you. But we're Baptists, and Baptists don't typically operate that way. But one of the things that I have noticed that's kind of interesting is when churches hire a new pastor. They've just kind of met this individual. They haven't really talked to this person very long. And they will, I've had churches ask, Pastor, what vision do you have for our church? How can the pastor know? You know, what would be better is when the pastor interviews the committee. When the pastor says to the committee, what vision, church, do you have for yourself? You ought to know better than a new pastor who just met you. What vision do you have for yourself? Now let me come and be a part of the vision that God has given you. Wouldn't that be a better way to interview a pastor? And then, let's say a pastor is leading you in a vision that he or she has. What happens to that vision when the pastor leaves? Well, the pastor's gone now. We don't have to do that no more. The pastor left. So I guess the vision's over. That's not any way to have a vision. If you have a vision for your church, when the pastor leaves, what should happen to the vision? It keeps going. God called our pastor somewhere else. But our vision is still our vision. God gave it to us. So now when you interview a new pastor, wouldn't it be nice to say to the new person who's coming, let us tell you about the journey we are on. You can still be passionate. You can still be out there in the community telling people what exciting things are happening to your church. Yeah, we don't have a pastor right now. In fact, we still have staff. Good staff. Let me tell you what God's doing in our church. To be a faith-soaring church, we should own the vision, believe it comes from God, be captivated by it, be prepared to help their senior pastor cast vision, really the whole staff. And this vision should continue even when the pastor leaves. The congregation should own it, be excited about it, and about the new things that God is doing in and through them. And you shouldn't go back to places where you were comfortable, where the memory of the past makes it seem greater than it actually was. You know, the children of Israel did that. Oh, wasn't it better back in Egypt? We need to go back to Egypt. That's the way people are. Now, how do you know when you're captivated by a vision? Bullard says that when 21% of the active adults on any given Sunday over the age of 18 can articulate what the vision is, you know that you're captivated by it. Or, he says, every time that there is a major decision that is made in the church or in a committee, if somebody stops and says, how does this decision affect our vision? Here's the vision, and you're in a committee meeting, or you're in a staff meeting, or you're in a business meeting, and before you make the decision, you think, how does this line up with our vision? Then you know you're captivated by vision. So, let's look real quickly at relationships. Within the church, this is the best defined as the disciple-making process. It's turning irreligious people into fully devoted followers of Christ. This is about connecting people to these things: Christ, congregation, community, calling, commission. We want, don't we? This is what I'm doing with the Contagious Christian class. I'm trying to help us understand that it is our responsibility as Christians to connect people to Christ. We're trying to reach the unchurched. We're trying to bring them to a saving faith in Christ. And then when we connect them to Christ, or even before that, we want to connect them to a congregation. We want people to come to church, don't we? And we want to do that after they become Christians. We want to connect them by membership. We want to assimilate them into the congregation through their participation. We want to reach out to potential new members through conversion and baptism. And of course, we have a lot of people coming to us from other places. Do you know right now in the city of Jefferson, there is 100 new housing units being built right now in our city limits. Right now. And there's more coming. What are we going to do to reach out to these new people in our community? Some of them are going to be people looking for a church home because they are already connected to a church somewhere else. Others of them are not. If we have a vision, we might be able to say to them, hey, we have a place for you here in our church. If we have no vision, they might stumble upon us. And they might not. We want to connect people then to community. Assimilating new members into the full fellowship and the care ministry components of the congregation. At this stage, people have friendships. You have friendships. You've discovered community when you have at least 6 good friendships within the context of the church. 6 good friendships. These are people that you could spend time with away from the church. You don't just know their names, but these are good friends. You could call them on the phone. You could send them an email or a text or if you have a problem. You got 6 good friends. But until then, you really don't have community yet. You're just popping in for worship and then leaving. You still don't yet have discovered community. So we seek to connect people to a calling. We want people to know what their gifts are. We want people to know that God wants to use their skills to be a part of the kingdom and to use their skills for the sake of Christ. And then we seek to connect people to a commission. The laity are mobilized through the Great Commission. People discern, discover, develop, and act on their personal ministry calling. So this is where people are sent out from the church in various ways. And this is a wonderful thing when people discover, hey, I have gifts. And when people go out and participate in a meaningful ministry of some kind, it's life-changing. So, relationships are missional. And this is a word that's thrown out there, and I want you to understand what the definition of missional is. If we become a missional congregation, then we're captivated by the mission of God. We seek to make the world more loving and just through spiritually transforming the lives of our neighbors. But this is more about lifestyle than about a project or a mission trip. So it's sort of like if I had a glass right here and I put water in it, and I took a dropper and I dropped a couple of drops of red dye in it. Eventually, it would permeate the entire jar of water. That's what missional is, so that the love of God permeates everything that you do within your life. Your work environment, your home environment, when you go to the ball field, everything that you do, you are on mission for God. You don't ever have the Christian hat off of your life. So, relationships that are missional, they're genuine. You minister to those who believe God sends you to. You present the gospel in ways in which you are gifted. You share the gospel with those that you develop relationships with. And you care about the needs within your own congregation. They are extremely focused, and you seek to mobilize their congregation to be received, accepted, embraced, and trusted by their neighbors. So, relationships are in the front seat because people desire to be a part of the fellowship of believers and followers and are deeply related to the triune God and growing in that relationship. This cannot happen in programs. People want an experience that is worth their time. So we can have a program here and we can invite people to come to our program, but it's in relationships where people are going to experience more transformation. Okay, this is important to me. The space we worship in and the symbols that we use for worship are important because space and symbols either enhance or inhibit our relationship experiences with God and with each other. I want you to think about the numbers of churches that now have pastors preaching via video. What is that all about? Why don't these people just stay home and watch a preacher on TV? The reason is because they cannot form community in their living room. They'll still go to a church and watch a preacher on a video. That's not the issue. They still go to that church because they find community in that church. But this is what is interesting to me. Warehouse churches work because they provide space for people to congregate and fellowship before worship. Remember, most of these people do not attend Sunday school. Some of them are in small groups, but they do not have Sunday school. You fellowship before you go to worship in Sunday school. Once, architects started with a sanctuary as the master plan and then oriented the rest of the facilities around it. Now they plan the gathering space first, and then they organize everything else around it. Gathering space is the key place for relationships in these churches. In other words, if you were to go to one, you'd walk in the front door or a side door or wherever. It's usually kind of hard to figure out. But you don't walk into a worship space first. You walk into a huge gathering space where people are drinking coffee, they're sitting at tables, they're gathering in small groups, they're doing all kinds of fellowshipping and talking. And you have to walk through a sea of people before you ever get to a worship space. Note the limited gathering spaces that we have in our church. It's a barrier for relationships to form. We're spread out on this campus. This campus is hodgepodge. And for a guest to come to find where he or she is supposed to go to meet anybody, where do they go? We've tried very hard to have signage. We've tried very hard to put people in the parking lots. But even then, most of you don't know anybody else except just the person in your own age group. It's very hard for us to bump up against other people. We don't have gathering space on this campus. This space is about it, and it's very hard for us to do this. Today, people want to be a part of a cause, something they can give their passion to. They want to be a part of a congregation that is on a journey that allows them to be missional to the needs of a hurting world and helping others. Many people work out their own hurts. This is the reason why relationships form doing missional things away from the church. You meet people doing things together. Gretzky said, don't skate to where the hockey puck has been. He said, skate to where it is going. This is what vision is. We have to think down the road, people, okay? So now we're at programs. This one's shorter. What is program? It's ministries, it's services, it's activities, it's training, it's worship. You came to a program today, folks, okay? It's music, it's education, it's community ministries, it's building, it's age group activities. That's what programs. It requires planning, it requires scheduling, requires somebody bringing the chili, planning all that, leadership, it's committee meetings, it's materials, all of this stuff. All this is programming. Programs are a means to the desired end result. It's not the results themselves. Now, success in programs and ministries does not always mean that the church is successful. You can tout, we got a successful program. This program's successful, this program's successful, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your church is successful. Programs must deepen and enhance what? Relationships. This is programs that's here and programs that's supporting relationships. That's why it's in the back seat. Okay? How many of you are backseat drivers? All right? Backseat driver. And you're always telling the front seat driver what to do, where to go. But you're supposed to be helping. Okay? All right, helping. Okay, you're supposed to be helping back there in the back seat. Programs and management are the mind and the strength of the faith soaring process. Remember, they're very important, but they have their place. And we hold evidence of programs in our hands, such as a calendar, a budget, attendance report, evaluation sheets. Now, they can seem like they're driving the church because they get so much announcement time. You hand the pastor or somebody an announcement. Will you please announce this today? Okay? I need this announced. Programs are, begging for time, begging for space. Please announce this because, but it's always a supporting factor. They're never the fueling factor. A church can have too many programs. They can eat up too much leadership and too much resource, so they can weigh down the congregation and keep us from soaring. And if you've ever said, oh gosh, another meeting at the church. Pastor has another meeting at the church. Then you have to begin to ask, do we have too much going on? Is it a burden? Programs should accomplish more by doing less. Everything that we do should be done with excellence. We should have great preparation, great delivery, great follow-up. So every time we leave a program, we should at least be saying that was worth my time. Programs are in the back seat as a supporting role. I said that. And they do not exist for themselves. If genuine relationship experiences are not taking place in the lives of groups, individuals, or the congregation as a whole, either, this is important, either the purpose of the program needs to be reevaluated, changes made, or the program needs to be stopped. It's okay, people, for us to say, we don't need to do that anymore. It's okay. All right? We can stop some things if it's not supporting the vision. But you know what? If we don't have a vision, if we don't know where we're going, we'll just be doing things because we have always what? Done it that way. Okay. So here we are, management. We're getting there. When vision diminishes, management takes over. Programs, not relationships, become the desired outward sign of success. Notice who's driving now? Who's also in the front seat? All right. This is not what we want, folks. Because there's a codependent relationship between management and programs. There's many charts that shows the life cycle of a church. Bob Dale did this one many years ago. But this is when the top of this is ministry. When a church is cooking, when a church is moving and doing what it's supposed to do, ministry is taking place. But when a church reaches maturity, nostalgia begins to happen. People begin to complain and said, "Oh, you know, how things used to be." This is when management typically moves to the front seat. I'm going to show you this, not to offend anybody, it's just the truth. When a church moves toward nostalgia and begins to decline, there is often a huge percentage of people over the age of 60 that have been a Christian for longer than 40 years and have been a member of the same church for 20. And what is also, though, true about those people is that they're usually the best givers. But they're also very resistant to change. Do you know that a church can be managed to death? It can be. The attitude then becomes, good enough is good enough. Let's not reach too high. Don't make us uncomfortable. Don't ask us to exercise faith. And ultimately, management becomes dysfunctional, and management principles begin to break down. And when you are driven by money and not by faith, we do need money, We have to have money to fulfill the vision. But without a vision, the tail is wagging the dog. When you're constantly having to run to the bylaws to settle conflict, you know that there's dysfunction in the church. When you're constantly, when tradition and culture become more important than vision, that's an indication that there's dysfunction in the church. When people are stuck in the past and are afraid to listen to God to discover new vision, you know there's dysfunction in the church. Management is used to control. When management is used to shut down readiness for change and transition in favor of maintaining the tradition and culture of the church, then there's dysfunction. When a few seek to control the direction of the church and create political alliances, there's dysfunction. So instead, what do we want? We want faith-soaring churches that are managed by leadership committees, deacons, staff, directors, boards, and other laity who have taken on an administrative task as a sacred trust for the church and the ministry of the congregation. They're committed to leadership that asks this question: how is this going to help our congregation live into God's vision for our future? And if any proposed action or decision does not support the God-given vision of the congregation, unless there's no alternative, they do not take that action or make that decision. These leaders have no interest in power, but their interest is in seeking their congregation or seeing their congregation soar with faith as more of the congregation engages in programs and relationships of the congregation. So here we are at the end. My question then to you is, do you want to soar with faith? Do you want to begin a journey where God will eventually reveal His vision, a vision that's bigger than us, a vision that is worthy of our time and will pull us into a new decade of ministry? And so, Renee Bird will say, we don't need to change. What's wrong with the way things are now? When we change, it just makes conflict. But as I've said, even churches that soar with faith have to revision or they will lose their synergy. So, as we conclude, I want you to take these, and I want you to check one of 4 boxes. Because, seriously, I'm not interested in leading us. If you don't want to embark on this journey, I won't take us there. But if you do, then this is a significant group. But you also have to join with me as leaders. There's 4 boxes. I want you to check beside them. I'm not going to take the time to read them. You can read for yourself. But I'm going to hand these out. Thank you, Justin, very much. I appreciate you. Also, the other one here is for you to take home. There are 10 characteristics of faith-soaring churches. But if you'll take the time, just put a check by one box. Be very honest. Thank you for taking those lessons today. So.